Hi, I hope you're ready to learn more about methods. We are going to do some actual methods today, so it's going to be kind of fun. This is usually pretty interactive, so I'm going to pretend that you're answering me as I go. So play along. Okay, so implementing methods. We want to create an actual method, that's so fun, that will calculate the volume of a cube given the length of a side of the cube. Now, why don't I have to have length, width, and height when I want to find the volume of the cube? Because isn't that volume, length times width times height? What's that you say? Yes, all three are the same size on a cube. That's why it's a cube, because all the length, width, and height, all the same size. So we would just need to do, it will be length times width times height, but all three are equal to whatever that side length is because it's a cube. Okay, so we know that a cube has three sides that are the same length. And we're going to think of that length as S. Okay, parameters. Do you remember? Parameter variables. Those are arguments or inputs. I called them that yesterday or the last lecture, but I didn't tell you, I didn't write it specifically, so here I am writing it. Those are pretty much the same thing, arguments, inputs, parameter variables. So parameters are also actually the parameter variables. That's the name that you use in the method declaration. So remember how you have to declare a variable? Same thing for methods. You have to declare the method, and when you declare it, you use a parameter variable to tell Java inside the method, whenever I say this word, that's the input variable that we just got. The return variable, that is just what we were talking about before. I'm looking at my notes real quick. That's the value and type of value that gets sent back to the calling method. Okay, so we have something we call the method header. The method header is just explains the name of the method, what the return values, and what the parameters are. So, and it has to be in a certain order, of course. The method body, that's where you do the calculations. And return the result. Okay, so here's a call to the method. I just want to scroll down real quick. Okay. Here's a call to the method that we haven't created yet. So we need to create this method called cube volume. And here's what a call to cube volume would look like. Right now, cube volume is a total black box because it doesn't exist. But what we want to do is call it cube volume, and we want to pass it a parameter in this argument of 2, and we want to get it back, the volume, I'm assuming, in something called result1, and it should be typed double. So there's one problem with cube volume, and that is it's not following our coding standards. It needs to start with a verb. So I'm going to change it so that it says get cube volume. Like that, both places. And you might notice that I'm calling it twice. That's because I can. And I wanted to show you I can. and I can get a different value each time. Result 1, result 2, I could just keep going as often as I wanted. So that makes it really handy, and it makes my code look really nice. If I need to find the volume twice, I can find it 10 times, I can put it in a loop, whatever I want. But let's get back to creating that method. We have to be outside of the main method to create a new method. I can't nest methods like I can nest if statements. I can't do that with methods. One has to start and end, and then the other after it can start and end. Okay, so I have to be careful about that. So I'm going to put it outside here, and notice how it says public static void main. I'm going to do the same thing for my method, public static, except for I have to return type double. So instead of void, void doesn't return anything. Double will return something of type double. And then instead of main, I'm going to put the name of my method. So my method name, I can see it down below, is get cube volume. And then I'm going to give it some parameters. I need to pass in one thing, and that's a side length. And it looks like it could be type int. So I will say int side length. And then come to the end, starting squiggly, just like main. See how main has, these are, look, it's just got string with some weird square brackets, which we will learn about in chapter 6. And then it has a name args for arguments. Here we're just going to have int side length instead of say string args. We're going to have int side length, starting squiggly, and then come to the end of it and do your enter, and it'll give you your ending squiggly. So I'm going to say end get cube volume, because when I put an end in comments here, it really helps me out, because then I can see where one starts and ends very easily. Now Eclipse does help me out. If I double click on the squiggly, it'll show me it's matching squiggly, so that is nice. But I do also like you to put the end at least on the method, on the end of the method. Okay, so we have to get going. We take in the length of the side, and I want to figure out what's the volume. So it's a cube that has side length by side length by side length. And remember, to find the volume of a cube, you multiply all three of those together. Okay, so we have multiple ways we can do it. We can start off by saying double volume, make it make sense for our scenario, equals, and then I can say math.pow, and my base is going to be side. That's not right. Nope. Is it? I need to do side length times side length times side length. So that would be cubed, right? Side length cubed. And whoops. And it looks like I have that 3 there. It's kind of a magic number, so I'm just going to change it to cubed. And then I'm going to come back up to my method, and I'm going to say, okay, I need to define cubed. So final int cubed equals 3. Now that's all happy. I created cubed, and then I'm using it to find something called volume, which I'm letting be type double. It seems to be fine here. I still have an error in my method, which is weird, so I'm going to hover there. Oh, yeah, we said this method would return something of type double. So it's holding us to it. It says you said double and you're not returning anything. So we need to return, and that's exactly how you do it. You say return, and then we want to return that volume. We calculated the cube volume and we stuck it in a variable called volume, so we're just going to put volume here with a semicolon, and now no errors, and it looks really good because I'm getting in something that is going to be stored in side length. That's my variable name, and my variable name side length has a value of, well, one time it has a value of 2 and another time it has a value of 10. Could have any value we want. And then I'm setting up something called cubed, and then I'm taking whatever that side length that got entered and cubing it, sticking it in a variable that I made up and named volume, and then I'm sending volume back. Volume is going to come back and be stuck into result 1 for this line, and then stuck into result 2 for this line. So looks like this is all correct. I have no errors in my code, so I want to run it and see what happens. A cube with side length 2 has volume 8. A cube with side length 10 has a volume 1000. I wrote one method. I called it 2 times, and I had it calculate 2 different volumes. That's pretty neat. Okay, so here's one call to my method, and here is the other call to my method. One of them passed in 10, the other passed in 2. You can see I printed out result 1 and result 2. Okay, pretty neat, right? Okay. Okay, down here I do see some magic numbers, and they are kind of bugging me. I'm hoping they bug you too. So what we'd like to do is put constants, and I want to set those up. I need one for the number 2, so I'm going to say side 1, so it'll be maybe int, final int, two, equals 10, and then instead of this 2, I'll put side 1, and instead of the 10, I'll put side 2. And then down here, I don't want to put it there, because what if I change this 10 to 5? And then I run, and now it says a cube with side length 10 has a volume of 125. That's not right. So I need to fix it so that in the printout, I'm using the same constant that I used in the actual call to the code. So instead of hard coding the 10 here, I'll just put a %d, and the same for the 2, %d. And then here I can put side 1, and here side 2. And then let's run it again. Oh, now it fixed it. So now side length 5 has a volume 125. That makes sense. Now I hope all these zeros are bothering you, because they are bothering me too. So we can fix those by coming right before the %f and putting it as %.2f, or even %.1f. It's up to you. I'll do one of each just so we can see them. Oh, I put that one in the wrong space, wrong spot. So there, .2 in front of the f. And then run that. So a cube with side length 2 has a volume of 8.0. A cube with side length 5 has a volume of 125.00. So this one's from the .2 and the .1, so you can see 1 output decimal place and 2 output decimal places. Okay, we need to go look at this static method declaration on page 205. So let me get that pulled up. Here we are. Ah, there we go. So here we're looking at public static, and then this is the type that we're going to return, the name of our method, followed by a parenthesis, and then what's the parameter type in the parameter name, comma, and then you can list more parameter type, parameter name pairs, as many as you need for however many parameters you want. Parenthesis, and then put your squiggly right up here on the line with the method declaration, and then you have your method body. That's where you do all your work, and then your ending squiggly. Here's an example. Again, I like this squiggly to be right up here at the end of the method declaration line. Public static double cube volume has a parameter double side length. And then double volume, they did it a little differently than us. That's okay. Side length times itself 3 times. That works just as well as math.pow. And then they did have to return volume too, just like we had to, and then ending squiggly. So this is the method body, and it's what gets executed whenever you call cube volume and pass it a side length. Okay. Oh yeah, notice up here that we're inside the class that's called Chapter 5, Section 2. The class starts here and ends way down at the end of the file, very end of the file. And inside of that class, I have two methods. One is find cube volume or get cube volume, and the other is public static void main. Okay, so I have two methods inside one class. Perfectly reasonable. We can do that. So they can be inside of a class, but remember, we can't put this method, get cube volume, inside of public static void main. I'll show you. So if we take those lines, Control X, and then go right inside the squigglies, and Control V, it's not going to let me do it. It's going to say, yeah, you can't do this. It gets really upset with you. So we can come back to here and do Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, and put it back where it was. Okay, so that's what that next part was talking about. The main method is what gets run. We start in there. Java starts in there when you click Run. And we want to put a comment in each method. So here's how you do that. Come to the method name, to the very start, push Enter, and go up one line right before where it says public static void main, and then I'll do /*, and then push Enter. And what it does is it looks at the next method declaration and it pulls out any arguments. This one's called args, and it gives you a little space to make a comment. So in this main method, I would say implementing methods with examples. And then I would talk about what args are. Well, we haven't done anything with them. Some unknown arguments. And we'll look at that later in the semester, I promise. Here I'm looking at public static double get cube volume. So I go to that line, push Enter, go up a line before, /*, and push Enter. And now it's saying I have a parameter here of side length. So I'm going to say get cube volume calculates with the given side length. And then side length, that's my parameter. So I just described it. That's an input. I could leave that off because that's sort of implied. Side length is the length of a side of the cube. And then I am returning the cube volume. So I can just put that there. These kind of comments are specific to Java, and if you put them at the beginning of each method, that's where, if I could show you, this file comes from. If you do Javadocs, that's what we're creating there. But all of these are this description right here. That came from, I'll show you, it's pretty cool. That came from right here. So I may have talked to you about documenting your code and what a big deal it is in the workplace, and it has become so easy to do it that we just create this /*, and then it will pull in, do it after you create your method, and it'll pull in the parameters and the return value types and list them all out, and you can just describe each one, describe what the method does, and then you can come in here. Let me see if I can show you. Right here it says @Javadoc. If I click that, and then I expand it a little, it's showing me the cube volume, get cube volume, and it says calculates the volume of a cube with the given side length. It has parameter side length, which is the length of a side of the cube. We wrote that. and returns cube volume. It's beautiful. So the @param and the @return are keywords in Javadoc, and it'll create this documentation for you, which is so nice because then you don't have to go through and type it all in a separate document. You don't have to copy paste or anything like that. It's just, it does it for you, but you have to create this little blue thing. And to do that, you just go /**. Okay, so there's that. It's pretty awesome. And so we'll put in instructions here. Put /** right at the beginning of the method declaration. I should say on the line before, maybe, the method declaration. And then fill in descriptions of each part of the method. And then you can check how it's going to look. On the console window. Okay, so let's look back at our comments and see if we did a good job. We have a comment right before this, and we did an end comment on our squiggly. So I really like what we have for the comments here. Put this into your brain. This is how your code should look. Okay, and the same thing on main. Now that we know how to do that, we can just put a description of it, and you don't have to really put anything for args yet since we haven't learned about that. Notice at the very bottom of the file, I did put end main, end class, chapter 5, section 2. You should do that on yours too. This is the class name, and this is just the main method, so you can just put them like that. That would be fine. Okay, so back to here. We did fix the comment. Done. And then multiple parameters. You can put multiple parameters in your method call. You just separate with a comma. One other thing I wanted to tell you, I just noticed it on my notes here. Oh, in your comments, notice I'm not saying how I'm calculating cube volume. I'm just explaining. Calculates the volume of a cube. It just tells you what the method's doing, not how. So I don't want a blow by blow. I multiplied it by itself 3 times. I don't want you to describe what you're doing or how you're doing it. I want you to describe what it is you're doing so that someone can get an overview. They don't want to know what's going on in the black box. So they just want to know, what is the result that I'm going to get back? What are you doing for me? Okay. So when you're writing your comments, make sure you think about that. Here we go. Write a method header for a method with this description. Compute the smallest of the 3 floating point numbers. So we're not actually going to make the method. We're just going to say what the method header should have in it. And so, well, what do we have to return? So it'll be public, static, and is it void? Are we not returning anything, or do we have something to return? Oh, yes, we do have something to return. So it's a floating point number, so it'll be double, and that will probably be the smallest. And so we need to name this method, and it's supposed to find the smallest. So find smallest. And then what we will pass into it, it has 3 floating point numbers. So double num1 double num2 double num3. And that is our method header. So remember, the method body starts when we put the first squiggly and do our ending squiggly on the next line. So this part right here is our method header. And it's just defining what are you returning, what type, and what parameters are you taking in, and what shall I call them inside your method. Okay, so that's all that is. So, okay, this assignment is really critical. It really is. And I give you a lot of time to work on it. So really, I'm meaning that I don't give you a lot of other assignments, but we need this for later assignment and for your exam. So put some effort into it. Make sure you get it working really well, okay? So let's see. Explain it to you. We'll be using it later. Make sure it works. We want to check the type, whether it's supposed to be an integer, string, or a character, and then the range between the min and the max. Remember, when we do verification of input, that's what we're checking on. It has to be in the right interval, and it has to be the right type. So complete this correctly for a maximum score of 100%. You can see how serious I am about you getting this done. This is all I want you to do. Write a method that has this header, exactly this header. So copy paste and use it exactly as I've given it to you. Okay, these are in the wrong order, so you would want to put them in the correct order in your code. So we want to take Control X and just move it down to here. Okay, so now I have my comment for my method at the top, and then my method header. Now this comment is telling us, you and me both, what this method is supposed to do. So read this and use it to help you figure out what the method should do. It prompts for an integer, not a double, not a string, not a character, in the bounds provided as arguments. So we're sending in the boundaries. Okay? And it will return the first correct integer entered. So we have several parameters, 1, 2, 3 of them. The first one is a prompt, and it's text describing what the input is used for. The next thing is the minimum, and that is going to be the smallest integer that's acceptable. Acceptable means you can be equal to that number, right? It's acceptable. And then the largest acceptable integer. Again, you can be equal to that number and it's fine, but if you're bigger, we don't want it. And then return, that is going to be the first integer that was entered that's within the bounds that we provided. Okay, again, use this exactly as it is. You have to make it work. That's the thing. Okay, so you will be given a prompt and you will be given a minimum and a maximum inside of this collect integer method. Okay, so then in your main method, which is later, you will do public static void main, and you will set some parameters, these two, low int and high int. They'll be 0 and 100. When I go check your code, guess what? I'm going to change them. So make sure that you use the constants everywhere that you need those numbers, not 0 and 100. Okay? Then we have input, collect integer, please enter an integer, and I'm passing, please enter an integer. That is my prompt that you should pass. And then I am passing in 0, in this case, as low int and high int. So I'm passing the minimum and the maximum. And those all go into collect integer. So collect integer up here needs to be using low int and high int, which come in inside of, let me do it like this. So you should use minimum and maximum inside of collect integer because that's what we've said they will be called. Okay, just to help you out a little bit if you're getting stuck on that. So Control-Shift / to comment that part out. And so down here we're calling it low int and high int, but then it just passes the value 0 and 100, and then when we get into collect integer, now it's suddenly named minimum and maximum. It changes its name because of these parameter names, and that's okay. That's how it's supposed to work. Okay, and then so you call collect int. It's supposed to finally return an integer that is between 0 and 100 in this case, and it puts it into something called input value. And then we just print out what the input value is. So what I gave you here is everything, what should be in your main method. That's the entire main method. That's all you should have there. And then in your collect integer, that's the part that you have to create. You'll probably need a loop in there because you probably want to keep asking for a better value if they keep entering bad things. Remember, you need to check for two things: type and range. So is it the right type, is it integer, and is it in the right range? One more hint for you. Oh, I think I'm giving you hints here too. Okay, collect integer should check the input stream to see if the next item is an integer. If so, it should read it, and then it should check if it's between the minimum and the maximum that got passed in. If the integer is in the bounds specified, return it. You're done. Otherwise, if it's out of bounds, print an error message and ask for the integer to be read again. If the next item is not an integer, print an error message and ask for it to be entered again. You may need to use, and here's a hint, we did that in class like a week ago, you may need to use next to clear the buffer in between attempts. So you might have to clean out the bad input, otherwise it's going to get into this infinite loop. Add code to main to call collect integer to enter the number of cats between 1 and 100. And so instead of saying please enter an integer, you would say enter the number of cats. So that's the change you're going to make. And then you're still passing in low int, high int. Do not use magic numbers. And then look at some test cases. Think about what test cases you need. And if you don't know what's going on, you can't understand the instructions, please ask for help. And that is it for today. Have a great spring break and figure out collect integer. It's a great, great program you need to write.